She cheated on me, but I forgave her. Then she did it again. I never thought it like it happened to me until I found the messages. I guess I should start at the beginning. Her name was Emma, and for the past 2 years, I honestly believed she was my person. We met in college, of all places. She spilled coffee on my notes during a library study session, laughed nervously, and somehow managed to make me laugh through my frustration. That was the start. From that stupid little coffee disaster, everything just clicked. I don't know if it was the way she listened or the way her smile lit up a room, but something about her felt like home. Our relationship was easy at first, the kind that made people roll their eyes. We were that couple who knew each other's schedules by heart. The inside jokes were endless, and even the smallest gestures felt monumental. I'd bring her favorite coffee when I knew she had an early class. She'd leave little notes in my bag reminding me to eat. We talked about everything, our dreams, fears, embarrassing moments, and somehow it felt like no one else existed outside our little world. I genuinely thought we were perfect. But perfection is fragile. It started small. Little things I didn't notice at first. She'd occasionally check her phone and quickly hide the screen when I walked past, or laugh at messages I couldn't see. She'd mention plans vaguely. I have to meet some friends or just a quick outing, but I'd notice inconsistencies when I later learned she wasn't telling me the whole story. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. I trusted her. I loved her. And I believed that if there was nothing to hide, nothing to fear, right? The day I found out, it was completely random. I wasn't snooping. God, I would never have thought I'd do something like that. But she left her phone on the counter while she ran to the bathroom. A notification popped up on the screen, a message preview from a name I didn't recognize. At first I shrugged it off. Maybe it was a coworker, a distant friend, someone I didn't know, but something in the preview made my stomach drop. The words weren't innocent. They were intimate, flirty, and crossed lines that should have been sacred between us. I froze. My hands shook as I grabbed her phone, hesitating for a split second because in that instant I knew. I didn't need to read much to realize my world was crashing down. There were messages, texts, photos, and even snippets of plans, evidence she'd been seeing someone else, someone she called by a nickname that made my chest tighten just by reading it. It wasn't just flirting, it was betrayal, pure and simple. I felt sick. My stomach twisted. My throat tightened and my vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. I sat there on the kitchen counter, staring at her phone, trying to deny it, trying to tell myself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew better. When she came back, laughing softly because she thought nothing was wrong, I couldn't even speak. I just stared. The color drained from her face the moment she saw mine. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice faltering slightly. I wanted to scream, to cry, to throw her phone across the room, but I just whispered, "Who is he?" She froze. For a moment, I thought she might lie, but then she looked away, biting her lip, and in that moment, everything shattered. She admitted it. She had cheated. She tried to explain. She said it was a one-time mistake. She was confused. It meant nothing, but the words felt hollow. My heart was breaking. My trust was in pieces, and the person I loved more than anything had violated the very foundation of what we had built. I didn't know what to do. I debated leaving her right then and there. I wanted to scream at her, to hit something, to make the world understand the pain I was feeling. But there was this other voice inside me, one that still loved her, one that believed maybe, just maybe, this was a mistake we could survive. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying every memory, every smile, every kiss. Could I forgive her? Could I pretend this never happened and move forward? I hated myself for even considering it. But love is messy, isn't it? And I loved her. I still did. The next morning, I sat her down. I told her how devastated I was, how I felt betrayed, and how my trust had been shattered. And then I told her I was willing to try, that I was willing to forgive her because I believed in us, because I wanted to believe that this was a mistake and not a reflection of who she was. She cried, she apologized, she promised it would never happen again. And I wanted to believe her. We tried to move forward, carefully, like walking on broken glass. I looked for signs, for anything that might hint at deception, but I tried to trust. I reminded myself of the laughter, the late night talks, the moments when she held me and told me everything would be okay. Those moments became my anchor. But even as I forgave her, a part of me remained wary. I noticed the subtle glances at her phone, the slight defensiveness when I asked about her day, and the way she seemed distracted sometimes. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was paranoia, that I was overthinking, but deep down, I knew something had changed. Still, I held on. I wanted to hold on, because love isn't always rational. It isn't logical. Sometimes it's desperate, clinging and painfully stubborn. I forgave her because I wanted to believe in us. I forgave her because I loved her more than I feared being hurt. And so, we continued. The laughter returned, the small gestures of affection came back, and for a while, it felt like everything was okay. But every time she looked at her phone a little too quickly or smiled at a text too long, my heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that one mistake didn't define our love. But I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that lingered, like a shadow over everything we had. I wanted to trust her completely, but a tiny, fragile part of me was already bracing for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of the story. Because love, as I was learning the hard way, doesn't always protect you from betrayal. And as I stared at her that night, laughing at some dumb joke I barely heard, I couldn't help but wonder, was I really in love? Or was I just clinging to the idea of who I thought she was? Either way, I had forgiven her. And that forgiveness, I would soon learn, was going to be the hardest thing I ever gave. I should have seen it coming. The excuses, the secret smiles, the late nights. After what happened, after I found the messages and forgave her, I told myself I was giving us a second chance. I convinced myself that trust could be rebuilt, that love could survive even the worst mistakes. And for a while, things seemed almost normal. Almost. The first few weeks after the incident were quiet. We smiled, laughed, and went through our routines like nothing had happened. I held on to that, like a drowning man clinging to a lifeline. I watched her carefully, noting every word, every gesture. I wanted to see the Emma I fell in love with, the girl who spilled coffee and made me laugh, not the one who betrayed me. But then, the cracks started appearing. It was subtle at first. She started getting defensive over things she never had before. A friend texted her, and she flinched when I asked who it was. A colleague invited her to a late meeting, and she seemed annoyed at my curiosity. "It's nothing," she said. "Stop worrying." And I did. I wanted to believe her. I told myself my trust could carry us through this, even if her actions made it hard. Late nights became more frequent. She claimed work, friends, random errands, but something didn't feel right. I'd see her laugh at texts in a way that made her cheeks flush, or catch her checking her phone a little too quickly when I walked into the room. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but fear and hope tangled in my chest. I didn't want to destroy the fragile progress we'd made. I remember one night specifically. She came home late, around 11:30, and I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch a show but really just waiting. She was smiling at her phone, scrolling, texting someone. I asked casually, "Everything okay?" And she snapped, just a little. "Yes, I told you, stop asking." Her tone stung more than I wanted to admit. I froze. My stomach twisted. That familiar gut feeling, the one I had learned to ignore after the first betrayal, started gnawing at me. But I pushed it down. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being paranoid. I wanted so badly to believe in her, but the signs kept coming. She'd disappear for hours without explanation. When I asked, she'd give vague answers, just hanging with friends, ransom errands, or "you worry too much." I tried to trust her words, but my instincts whispered the truth she wouldn't admit. I began questioning myself. Was I being too sensitive? Too controlling? Did I deserve this paranoia after trusting her once already? Then came the moments I couldn't ignore. The small lies, the flirty messages she would forget to close on her phone, the way she'd laugh at a text and quickly set it aside. And each time I hesitated. I wanted proof, concrete evidence, before I accused her again. Because what if I was wrong? What if I was imagining things, letting paranoia ruin something that could still work? I remember one afternoon, I was at her place helping her with some paperwork. Her phone buzzed, and for a split second, I saw a name flash across the screen. Not a name I recognized, not a friend or a coworker, a nickname I'd never heard before. My heart stopped. I tried to stay calm, but the words on the screen were enough to make my stomach flip. Playful, intimate, something that made me feel like I wasn't even in her life anymore. I confronted her that night, trying to be calm, logical, rational. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing to her phone. She looked at me, her eyes widening, and for a second I thought she might confess. But then came the denial, the excuse, the gaslighting. "It's nothing, just a friend," she said too quickly. "You're imagining things again. Why do you always think the worst?" And just like that, the doubt crept in. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was the problem, not her. That's the thing about gaslighting. It's subtle, slow, and poisonous. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Weeks passed like this. Suspicion gnawed at me, but I stayed. I stayed because I loved her, because I hoped love could heal what had been broken. But the tension was a constant weight on my chest. Every laugh at a text, every secretive smile, every late night excuse made me second guess reality. And then it happened. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't snooping, but I saw it. A clear, undeniable truth that shattered whatever hope I'd been holding on to. Her phone buzzed while she was in the shower, and I, against my better judgment, peeked. There it was. Messages, pictures, plans. She was seeing him. Not emotionally, not flirtily, but physically. She was with someone else, and this time there was no room for interpretation. No way to convince myself it was nothing. She cheated again. I felt my chest tighten, my throat close, and my vision blur. I couldn't breathe. I sank to the floor, staring at the screen as if staring hard enough could make it all disappear. She came out moments later, smiling, expecting everything to be normal. "Hey, I'm back," she said, wrapping her arms around me. I didn't respond. My hands shook. My heart ached in a way I didn't think was possible. "Are you okay?" she asked, genuinely, or at least pretending to be. I couldn't speak. I just shook my head. The betrayal was fresh, raw, undeniable. Her face fell. I can explain," she stammered, but I didn't want to hear it. I wanted nothing to do with excuses, apologies, promises. She'd done it again. And this time, Forgiveness wasn't an option. I left. I didn't yell, I didn't throw things, I just left. Every step away from her felt like dragging my heart behind me, but I knew I had to get out. I had to breathe, had to process, had to face the reality that the person I loved more than anything could betray me. Not once, but twice. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every late night text, every subtle smile I'd ignored. How had I missed it? How had I allowed myself to be blind? How could someone I trusted so deeply be capable of this? Twice. I felt anger, heartbreak, disbelief, but most of all, I felt a bitter sense of clarity. I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. I couldn't gaslight myself into believing her excuses. The truth was staring me in the face. She had no respect for the bond we shared. She had no loyalty. She had chosen someone else over me, twice. And for the first time, I truly understood that love alone isn't enough to hold someone together. Trust is what matters, and once that's broken, there's no going back. I didn't reach out to her. I didn't call. I didn't even text. I just sat there, feeling the weight of betrayal settle in my bones. It hurt more than I ever imagined it could. But in the midst of the pain, something started to grow. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Resolve. I couldn't control her choices, and I couldn't make her love me the way she should have. But I could control myself. I could decide what I would and wouldn't tolerate. And right then, I made a promise to myself. No more excuses, no more second chances, no more blind forgiveness. I deserve better. I deserve someone who valued me, who respected me, who wouldn't hurt me twice. That night, I cried like I hadn't in years. Not just for the loss of her, but for the betrayal, the lies, the shattered trust. I cried for the love I had given freely and the heart that had been broken in return. And as the tears fell, I knew something else too. This was only the beginning. The road ahead was going to be painful, messy, and full of self-discovery, but I had finally opened my eyes. She had cheated again, and this time, there would be no forgiveness, no ignoring the signs, no blind hope. I was done. I realized love wasn't supposed to feel like this, like walking on glass every day, each step threatening to cut deeper than the last. And yet, there I was, caught between wanting her and hating her, between longing for what we had and knowing I could never go back to it. The day I confronted her is burned into my memory. I didn't plan it, didn't rehearse a speech. I just walked into her apartment with a storm inside me that I could no longer contain. My hands were shaking, my chest tight, my mind racing a million directions at once. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep living like this. She looked up when I entered, her usual smile faltering slightly. "Hey, what's wrong?" she asked, the casual tone already grating on my nerves. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel a fraction of the chaos she'd caused inside me. "I saw everything," I said, my voice low but shaking. "The messages, the pictures, the plans. You didn't just cheat once, you did it again. Do you have any idea what that does to someone who loves you?" Her face went pale, then defensive. "It's not what you think," she started, and I cut her off. "I don't want excuses, Emma. I don't want your explanations. I want the truth." She hesitated, then tried a familiar tactic. Apologies, promises, blame shifted just enough to make me doubt myself again. "I messed up," she said, voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was confused. I love you. Love, that word. The one I wanted to hear, the one I longed for, the one I'd clung to like a lifeline. But this time, it sounded hollow, like a lie she told herself as much as she told me." I felt my stomach churn. Rage, heartbreak, frustration. It all collided into a force I couldn't contain. "Love?" I snapped. "Love isn't supposed to destroy someone from the inside out. Love isn't supposed to make them question everything about themselves, every moment, every laugh, every text." She flinched, tears welling up, and I felt a flicker of the old warmth I used to associate with her, but it was fleeting. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't love. It was manipulation. It was her way of keeping me tangled up, clinging, forgiving, hoping, and somehow I let it happen again. Days passed in a blur of arguments and apologies. She would cry, I would forgive, I would hate myself for forgiving. Friends noticed. I could see it in their eyes. The concern, the frustration. "Why do you keep letting her do this?" My best friend asked one night after I spilled everything over beers. "She's shown you who she is. Why are you still giving her chances?" I didn't have an answer because I didn't know. I loved her. I had loved her through the betrayal, through the lies, through the sleepless nights when I questioned my own sanity. And part of me was addicted to that love, addicted to the highs after the lows, addicted to the hope that maybe, somehow, she would change. My family noticed too. My sister cornered me one afternoon. "You're breaking yourself," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You've given her every chance in the world. It's time to look at yourself and what you deserve." And that hit me harder than anything. I realized I had been living on borrowed time in my own life. I had been bending myself into someone who could forgive anything, who could endure anything, just to keep her around. I had ignored my own needs, my own dignity, my own self-worth. The cycle was brutal. Betrayal, heartbreak, apology, forgiveness, hope, repeat. It was like being trapped on a treadmill I couldn't step off, and every time I thought I'd escaped, she found a way to pull me back. I remember one night in particular, lying in bed next to her, pretending to sleep while my mind replayed every lie, every excuse, every flirty message she thought I didn't notice. I realized that love wasn't supposed to feel like this. Love wasn't supposed to make you question your sanity every day. Love wasn't supposed to hurt more than it healed. The breaking point came quietly, like a tide that had been building for months. I sat her down, really sat her down, looked her in the eyes, and said something I had been rehearsing in my head for weeks but never had the courage to voice. I can't do this anymore. Her eyes went wide. Do what? She asked, her voice small, panicked. This, I said, my voice steady now, surprisingly calm despite the storm inside me. This cycle, the cheating, the lies, the manipulation. I can't keep forgiving you and pretending it's love, because it isn't. It's not healthy, it's not fair, and it's not real. I can't live my life like this. She tried to grab my hand, to plead, to cry, to promise, but I pulled away. Every instinct screamed at me to stay, to forgive, to believe, but I had finally realized something critical. Staying would only hurt me more. It would only teach me to tolerate betrayal, to accept that being treated like this was normal. I packed a bag, not in anger, not in haste, but in clarity. Every item I placed inside was a statement. I was taking control of my life. I was reclaiming myself. I left her apartment that night, not with a dramatic scene, not with screaming, just quietly, firmly, resolutely. The days after were a mix of relief and raw emotion. Relief because I was free from the constant cycle of hope and heartbreak. Raw because the person I loved more than anything had repeatedly hurt me, and I had to mourn that loss even though she was still alive, still within reach. I spent hours reflecting on everything. Why I stayed, why I forgave, why I let myself be manipulated. I realized that part of me was addicted to the idea of her, addicted to the love I thought we shared, addicted to the hope that I could fix someone who wasn't willing to be fixed. But that night, lying alone in my apartment, I felt something new. Empowerment, strength, a quiet, growing confidence that I could survive this, that I could heal, that I didn't need to be anyone's doormat, anyone's punching bag, anyone's safety net. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I knew I would have moments of weakness, moments when I questioned myself, moments when I longed for her warmth and her laugh and her touch. But I also knew this. I would never let anyone break me like that again. I would never let someone manipulate my love into a weapon against me. And for the first time in months, I felt free. Not completely healed, not entirely whole, but free from the toxic cycle that had consumed me. Free to rebuild myself, free to rediscover what I deserved, free to finally start living for me instead of for someone who didn't value me. Breaking up with her wasn't easy. It wasn't a dramatic, cathartic scream into the night. It was quiet, deliberate, final. And in that quiet finality, I found liberation. Because love isn't supposed to feel like walking on glass every day. Love isn't supposed to make you doubt yourself, question your sanity, or beg for scraps of loyalty. Love is supposed to lift you, not bury you. And I finally understood that. I walked away, heart raw but stronger than ever, and for the first time, I truly believed I could survive and eventually thrive without her. I realized forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. When it's for me, not them. It's strange how quiet life becomes after someone you loved so fiercely is gone. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful at first. It feels hollow, echoing with the memory of everything that hurt. For weeks after I left her, I wandered through my apartment like a ghost of myself. Her laughter, her voice, even the smallest habits, the way she rearranged the cushions on the couch, the way she hummed while doing dishes, haunted me. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text her, only to remember she wasn't there. The first nights were the worst. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, going through every argument, every lie, every smile that had once felt like home. Self-doubt gnawed at me relentlessly. Was I overreacting? Could I have done something differently? Was I too harsh, too impulsive, too trusting? These questions churned endlessly, a storm of guilt and confusion I couldn't escape. But slowly, the storm began to clear. Not because I ignored it, but because I faced it. I faced the truth. Staying in that relationship had almost destroyed me. Not because I loved her too little, but because I loved her too much. I had given my trust, my patience, my forgiveness freely, endlessly, unquestioningly. And in doing so, I had lost sight of myself. It was liberating, in a way, to admit that. To finally say aloud that I deserved better. That love, real love, wasn't supposed to hurt like that. Real love wasn't supposed to demand my constant forgiveness while never offering respect or loyalty in return. The first step in moving on was simple in theory, but painful in practice. Reclaiming my time, my space, my energy. I started small. I spent evenings reading again, something I neglected while wrapped up in the chaos of our relationship. I joined a local gym, not to look better or impress anyone, but to feel my body alive again, to channel the rage and frustration into something constructive. I started cooking for myself, experimenting with meals I'd never tried before, reminding myself that I could enjoy my own company. Friends noticed a change immediately. Some were shocked that I lasted this long with someone who treated me that way. Others were just relieved to see me breathing again. We went out for dinners, late night drives, long conversations that didn't leave me questioning my worth. Slowly, laughter returned. Not the tense, forced laughter I'd had when trying to ignore red flags, but the genuine, unburdened kind. And yet, there were moments when the memories hit me like a freight train. A song on the radio, a familiar scent, a phrase she'd used. Small triggers that made my chest tighten, my hands shake, my mind spin. But each time I reminded myself, the pain wasn't a weakness. It was evidence that I had felt deeply, that I had cared. And that caring didn't make me weak. It made me human. One of the hardest lessons I learned was about forgiveness. I'd forgiven her, not once, but twice, and each time it had been at my expense. I realized forgiveness wasn't wrong, but it had to be for the right reasons. Not for her, not for anyone who had hurt me, but for me. To let go of the burden, to free myself from the weight of resentment. Forgiveness isn't condoning betrayal, it's reclaiming your power. I started noticing patterns in myself too. Why had I stayed so long? Why had I allowed repeated betrayal to define the rhythm of my life? It wasn't just about her, it was about my fear of being alone, my hope that love could fix everything, my obsession with proving to myself that I was the kind of person who could forgive endlessly. Recognizing these patterns was painful but necessary. Self-awareness became my anchor. As weeks turned into months, I found joy in new hobbies, things I put aside when our relationship dominated every moment. I started running regularly, feeling the wind push past me as if shaking off the weight of the past. I tried painting, horribly at first, but it became a form of therapy. A way to let emotions bleed onto a canvas instead of my chest. I reconnected with old friends, formed new connections, and built routines that centered around myself. I wasn't rushing into another relationship because I realized I didn't need one. I needed to rebuild me first. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to feel whole again. The anger remained, but it no longer consumed me. The heartbreak lingered, but it became a memory, a lesson, a warning. I understood now that I had been chasing a mirage, clinging to a person who couldn't give me the respect I deserved. And that clarity, painful as it was freeing. I started reflecting on what I wanted from future relationships. Trust became non-negotiable. Honesty wasn't just appreciated, it was essential. I wanted someone whose love didn't feel like walking on glass, whose presence made life lighter, not heavier. I realized that red flags weren't just coincidences. They were signals, signs I had ignored at my own peril. Recognizing them early wasn't paranoia. It was survival. One afternoon, sitting at a cafe, sipping coffee and watching people pass by, I realized how far I'd come. The shadow she left behind was still there in faint whispers, but it no longer defined my steps. I was laughing at a joke with a friend, genuinely amused, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free from someone who had repeatedly hurt me. Free from the cycle of hope, betrayal, and forgiveness that had trapped me. Free to rebuild my life on my own terms. I even started to feel hope for the future, not just in love, but in everything. I realized that being alone wasn't a punishment. It was an opportunity. An opportunity to explore, to grow, to love myself without conditions or compromises. I began journaling my experiences, not just to process them, but to remind myself of how strong I had become, how resilient I was in the face of heartbreak and betrayal. And somewhere in that process, I felt gratitude, not for her actions, God no, but for the lessons, for the painful clarity, for the realization that I could endure, recover, and thrive. I had been broken, yes, but I had also been awakened. By the time I looked back months later, I could see the full arc of the experience with a clarity that had been impossible in the fog of pain. I had loved deeply, trusted deeply, been hurt deeply, and yet I had survived. I had learned the hard way that love isn't about endless forgiveness for someone who doesn't deserve it. It's about valuing yourself enough to walk away when your heart is no longer safe. I'm not saying I don't think about her anymore. Memories surface, like they always will, but now they are just memories. They don't control me, define me, or dictate my choices. I'm the narrator of my own life again, and I have chosen strength over fear, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over toxic attachment. And the most important thing I've learned, the thing I want to share with anyone reading this, is this. Forgiveness can be powerful, but only when it's for you. Forgive yourself for staying too long. Forgive yourself for hoping. Forgive yourself for loving someone who didn't deserve it. That's strength. That's healing. That's freedom. I've started to imagine a future where love isn't a trap, where trust is mutual, where laughter doesn't come with suspicion. And that's the future I'm building. Not by forgetting the past, but by learning from it. Life after her isn't perfect. It's messy. It's emotional. It's full of days when loneliness creeps in and nights when memories sting. But it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like it's truly, completely mine. I'm stronger now. Wiser. More cautious, yes, but also more open to what is real, what is honest, what is worth my love. I've walked through the fire of betrayal and heartbreak, and I've come out the other side, not unscathed, but alive, aware and free. Because in the end, life after her taught me the most valuable lesson of all. You can survive betrayal, heartbreak, and loss. And when you do, you discover that your own strength, self-worth, and clarity are the things that will carry you further than any love that isn't meant for you. And I finally understand Being alone isn't empty, it's preparation. Preparation for a life and a love that will never make you doubt your worth again. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.